Iraq just removed ALL payment limits. Huge news for dinar investors. Iraqi Dinar, News Today 2025, including the intro for your channel RV News. Welcome back to RV News, your trusted source for real-time updates, insider analysis, and expert commentary on the Iraqi Dinar, the Vietnamese Dong, and everything related to the global currency revaluation movement. If you're holding IQD or VND, or you're simply trying to stay ahead of the curve, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a critical update. Now, let's get into today's absolutely game-changing story that's sending shockwaves through the dinar community. This is the kind of news we've been waiting for. It's official, Iraq has just removed all payment limits across both local and international transactions. This move is more than a bureaucratic adjustment. It is a massive step toward full currency liberalization, and many believe it's one of the final puzzle pieces before the long-anticipated revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Let's unpack what this really means. For years, Iraq has been under tight financial regulations when it comes to international payments. Whether it was due to political instability, financial corruption, or constraints from international watchdogs like the IMF or World Bank, Iraq's central bank had set caps on how much money individuals or businesses could transfer across borders. These limits were especially strict when it came to dollar transactions, often forcing companies and investors to rely on black market channels or convoluted approval processes to conduct global trade. These restrictions had a chilling effect on Iraq's economy. Foreign investors were discouraged. Local businesses struggled to pay for imported goods, and more importantly, for dinar holders. These payment limits were a huge red flag that Iraq's currency was still under international control, a clear sign that it was not yet ready to be traded freely on the global stage. But that just changed. The Central Bank of Iraq (CBI) has officially removed all payment caps, both for private citizens and corporations. This means Iraq is now allowing unlimited international payments, provided that proper documentation and compliance procedures are followed. In other words, if you can prove the legitimacy of your transaction, there are no longer any artificial ceilings. This signals a newfound confidence by Iraqi monetary authorities that their financial system is strong enough, transparent enough, and secure enough to handle free capital flow. It is also an unmistakable sign to the international financial community that Iraq is ready to step into the global marketplace as a full player, not a restricted, developing economy under supervision. Now, what does this mean specifically? For dinar investors, this move directly correlates with Iraq preparing to float its currency or possibly initiate a managed revaluation. Let's be clear, when a country removes payment limits, it's because it's trying to normalize its currency status. You don't lift these kinds of restrictions unless you're either A, moving toward full convertibility of your currency, or B, preparing for a drastic adjustment to your exchange rate policy. And for Iraq, this is happening alongside several other economic reforms that have been accelerating since late 2024. Over the past few months, Iraq has been pushing aggressively to de-dollarize its economy. The CBI has restricted dollar use in domestic transactions, cracked down on currency smuggling, and rolled out new mechanisms for conducting trade in dinars and other regional currencies like the Chinese yuan and Emirati dirham. Removing payment caps is a natural next step, but there's another layer to this. Iraq isn't just removing limits for no reason. It's because it's under pressure from multiple directions. On one hand, it's facing mounting economic pressure to attract foreign capital. The country's reconstruction efforts are expensive. The oil sector is volatile, and Iraq desperately needs to diversify its economy. On the other hand, Iraq is facing geopolitical pressure from allies and institutions that are pushing for transparency, compliance, and integration into the global system. By removing payment limits, Iraq is sending a message to the IMF, the World Bank, and countries like the United States that it's playing by the rules. It's also aligning itself more closely with international financial standards, which is a precondition for re-entering global currency markets and potentially reinstating a higher value dinar. If we go back and look at history, every major currency revaluation or adjustment has been preceded by liberalizing financial controls. Before Kuwait revalued its currency back in the 1990s, it took similar steps to restore payment flows and normalize banking operations. When Vietnam began modernizing its financial system, it also removes payment restrictions gradually to pave the way for future rate adjustments. What we're seeing with Iraq right now fits the same pattern. The writing is on the wall. Lifting payment limits removes one of the last barriers to free market currency valuation. Without these caps, Iraq's central bank is essentially saying, we're no longer afraid of volatility. We're ready to let the market decide, or at least we're preparing for a major shift. Now let's talk about the timing of this development. The announcement comes just weeks after multiple banking sources inside Iraq and the Gulf region confirmed that new systems are being tested at both private and central banks to process international payments more efficiently. Swift integration, ISO 20022 compliance, and real-time settlement systems are being rolled out at record speed. These are not isolated changes, they're connected. You don't overhaul your entire financial infrastructure, remove payment limits, and tell businesses to prepare for international flow unless you are about to reposition your currency. And while the Iraqi government hasn't officially announced a revaluation date, the signs are getting louder and clearer by the day. The impact on Iraqi citizens is also worth noting. For years, Iraqis have been trapped in a financial cage. If they wanted to send money abroad to family members, purchase property, invest in international markets, or even pay tuition for students studying overseas, they faced stiff limitations. Removing payment caps opens the door to a more liberal financial environment, one where Iraqis can participate in the global economy more freely. This boosts public trust in the banking system. It encourages more people to deposit their money into Iraqi banks instead of hoarding cash. And most importantly, it sets the stage for a massive surge in dinar usage, both inside and outside the country. Many in the dinar investment community are seeing this as one of the strongest signals yet, that Iraq is nearing the end of its transitional currency phase. If you've been holding dinar, this is the kind of news that should raise your eyebrows. We're not just talking about policy changes anymore. We're seeing real, structural, irreversible moves toward full monetary sovereignty. That's the last mile before a currency becomes globally tradable and revalued. Could we see the IQD reinstated to its former value? That depends on several variables: oil prices, global market conditions, and political stability. But in terms of technical readiness, Iraq is checking every box. Let's also factor in what this means for redemption centers and US-based dinar holders. Several sources have been reporting that certain US banks and private financial institutions have been quietly preparing to handle dinar exchanges if Iraq is removing payment limits on their end. It removes one of the final excuses for US banks to delay or limit dinar processing. In fact, this could be the trigger that prompts American banks to finally update their foreign currency platforms to accept and trade IQD in real time. You may remember that in the past, banks cited Iraq's payment restrictions and lack of international compliance as reasons for delaying any dinar-related activity. That argument is losing credibility fast. In recent days, insiders close to Middle Eastern banking officials have hinted that several Gulf nations are in talks with Iraq to establish dinar-based trade channels. If true, this would further stabilize demand for IQD and place upward pressure on its valuation. And guess what? None of this would be possible without removing those payment limits. By lifting those restrictions, Iraq has made it possible to settle international trades in dinar, something that was unthinkable just a year ago. This gives the IQD a real chance to become more than just a domestic currency. It could soon function as a regional trade unit, and possibly more. Looking ahead, investors should keep an eye on a few key indicators. First, watch for any official announcement from the CBI regarding a new exchange rate mechanism, whether that's a managed float, a basket peg, or a fixed revaluation. Second, monitor the IMF website and public releases for any signals that Iraq is in compliance with Article 8 of the IMF Articles of Agreement, which allows for full convertibility. Iraq has been operating under Article 14, which is more restrictive, but this latest move suggests they may soon graduate. And third, stay alert for any banking memos or rate sheet updates coming from regional and U.S. banks. Several sources have hinted that test rates are being circulated internally, something we've seen in previous RV scenarios. So, what should you, as a dinar holder, do now? First, stay calm. These developments are positive, but they are part of a larger transition that may still take weeks or even a couple of months to fully unfold. Second, make